Chairman, I want to go back to something Ms. Powers said nearly an hour and a half ago, I guess. And it was about the use of the DoD site and therefore the requirement that you have to use U.S. USAF requirements even if you have an RLV. And so the question is, then why did you use it? And second, must you use it? And third, what would be the alternative if the requirements didn't change?
And I'm sorry, why did we use the?
Said because you used a federal range, you had to do the prescriptive rules, even though you're using an RLV.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did we go to a federal range?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is, I think probably secret to no one, there is amazing legacy that exists at our federal ranges. There are folks working for the space wings that have a great deal of expertise in this area. And we saw it as a benefit not just from existing infrastructure that was already there. There are launch pads and launch sites that where we had the opportunity to either refurbish or build new structures relying on the infrastructure that already existed. We definitely have brought a commercial approach to that relationship, and this is where we see the struggle with the prescriptive requirements in many ways, whether it's building infrastructure or launching and returning a vehicle to that location. So it was definitely a cost-benefit analysis, and we decided that we had an opportunity to go to a federal range and rely on some of that amazing legacy expertise and infrastructure and the support that they could bring our program, while also progressing that model forward to be accepting of a more modernized commercial approach in some ways. So we see it as a system that can progress the same way that the administration has directed that the Air Force progress.
So if, as the numbers show, the commercial launches out of the U.S. are going to increase, and does that become less of a, is it less of an incentive as the numbers increase to use federal ranges, or is it more of an incentive?
Well, I will say, given that we also have the experience of flying New Shepard at a private launch site, we enjoy a lot of flexibility at our private launch site that we don't see at Cape Canaveral. And we feel that we've succeeded at setting up a vehicle that operates very safely from a public safety perspective at our West Texas launch site, and there are a lot of benefits to operating from a private site. And I think we've seen with the increase in the number of spaceports in any number of locations around this country that other actors might be behaving in the same way.
Yeah. Ms. Shennewerk, do you have a comment on that?
Sure. One of the comments that I'd like to make about being on a federal range versus being on a non-federal range, as we are on both about 3 miles apart from each other, is that when we operate with the Air Force, one of the benefits of working with the Air Force that I think may bear fruit for Blue Origins is the Air Force's ability to update its requirements with some level of regularity and ease that does not exist to rules that are written in the Federal Register and subject to the Administrative Procedures Act. So what we see as being—
Some would see that as an for some things. Yeah.
So, right. So for one of that actually drives one of the recommendations that we have with regard to the FAA rulemaking process, which is to create a performance-based approach, but then you could move some of the things that are prescriptive in the ELV regulations to guidance or to advisory circulars that could be updated more regularly. And then you could accommodate these operations under two different authorities in a much more kind of streamlined manner, and they could keep pace with each other much better.
Yeah. Ms. Gerheim, do you have a thought on this as well?
Well, ULA operates at the federal ranges, only at the federal ranges. So no real comment there. So,
okay, that's fine. That's fine. I know there's about 10 members of this committee that are also on the House Armed Services Committee, and it might be time for the 10 of us to, probably past time for the 10 of us to maybe to sit down as a group amongst ourselves and brainstorm this crossover between DOT and DOD. Can I get some clarification on the use of the NAS for launches? That is generally, do each of you believe that the technology is progressing and we have the people to narrow the amount of space that we absolutely have to use for commercial launches to address some of the issues about conflict in the NAS? That generally?
I think we absolutely do at this time. There have been a number of initiatives in the past, some of them mentioned today, that just really need to be finalized, right? So we have practiced and achieved flowing telemetry from flying space vehicles into the data center in New Jersey. And the final piece is getting those integrated into the air traffic system so that air traffic controllers can actually rely on that data.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the real-time data will allow us to shrink the airspace that we have to segregate. The next step after that, because that will limit it to a certain point, is the actual integration so there isn't segregated airspace. They're operating with us. That's where we run into the problem of adopting a 1 to the 10 to the minus 9th or 10 to the minus 6th. There's the challenge scientifically.
Yeah.
In that regard, my understanding is that we're years out from this if we don't expedite that approach soon. So right now, there are folks within the Next Gen office who are looking at how to design those. They've been running some test cases and designing some tests of this capability. They have some designs, but there's a next level of procurement that needs to occur, and then an integration testing and verification that needs to occur. So I've been told that that could be as long as 7 years.
Yeah. Graham.
And we're just becoming part of this conversation through the Airspace Integration ARC. And I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done on both sides. We just participated in the ARC committee meeting where we learned kind of the airline's perspective. And we have agreed to give a similar presentation back to the airlines so that they can better understand why do we have these long launch windows like some of the other panelists have discussed. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're doing that through the ARC.
Okay, if the chairman will indulge me, thank you. So Captain Knoll testified earlier about the presence of the moratorium till, is it 2023 on a lot of what the FAA can do, but there's some exceptions. But yet your argument, Captain, is that it doesn't prevent the FAA from working on these issues that might that it might be able to bring folks together outside of regulation, because there are outstanding issues that need to get addressed. Is that generally what you're saying?
Absolutely. We shouldn't wait to 2023 and begin the process. We can start right now. We can start right. As a matter of fact, we must start right now if we want a nice set of comprehensive, safe procedures and rules for us to jointly operate in the national airspace. We have to start right now.
Well, I think we have to clear the room after we're done with the hearing, but maybe you guys can meet out in the hall.
I'm willing. I got the rest
It's
of
that urgent. Do the rest of the panelists believe the same? You don't need to be waiting for the moratorium to lift, because in my personal view, this is kind of a classic thing where Congress will come to 2022 and say, let's extend it for 5 more years, which may be a good idea and may be a bad idea, but it's a matter of work having to get done being stymied by a moratorium that may not be necessary at the time. So.
And I think it's important to clarify that moratorium is applicable to passenger safety, so human astronaut safety on board the vehicle. Okay. The airspace issues, those are within the realm of the public safety efforts that are ongoing. So there's just a little bit of a difference there.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a very important point of clarification, and I think a misconception about this learning period. The FAA regulates our activities for public safety, right? So that is to prevent any property or harm to any people or government property on the ground or in the air or at sea. So it is regulated for that safety aspect. This question of the learning period specifically has to do with carrying human spaceflight participants on board a spacecraft. So as far as the public is concerned, the difference between having a human on board and having a satellite on board is it's the same level of safety to protect the uninvolved public. We'll also point out that many of us that are engaged in carrying human spaceflight participants, we're doing so at SpaceX in collaboration with NASA. So we are building our Dragon spacecraft to meet NASA human spaceflight requirements and to achieve their certification level. So that is a significant level of what you could otherwise call regulation, but because it's NASA, it's requirements that go to the design and build and operation of that vehicle.
Right, right. Ms. Graham?
We think it's time to start the discussion about ending the moratorium.
Yeah. Okay, great. So thanks. In closing, I would like you all, and I invite the subcommittee, if it's possible, to come back and report in a year once the FAA has issued its proposed rule. Clearly, there's still a lot of opportunity to ensure the continued growth and success of the commercial space industry, but being mindful of the safety mandate. And I would be interested in hearing from all of you before then as well, but on what the FAA's proposal seems to address and what requirements might need further evaluation and time to work through. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The cap